already set up my file with the image planes that I drew beforehand. I inverted them so the lines would be easier to pick out in white. I also have them centered in the world origin. The reason why is when you hit left, front, bottom, or back, it centers you right in the world coordinates in the middle of the 0, 0, 0. So if you have them too high or too low, you're going to have to constantly adjust your viewport for where you want to go. So the first thing that I'm going to do is plan out the masses. This is just a eight-sided cylinder, and I've lined it up where I want it to go for the most part. I normally generate mapping coordinates. It might actually help later when it comes time to mapping, but 8 sides and 5 segments. So I'm going to go ahead and convert to an edit poly, hit Alt-X for transparent, and just do a general lining up of where everything's going to go. Don't try and get too high poly or hit every cross section that you're going to need, because this is just a general layout and you want to make sure that you're going to be able to meet your poly budget later on. And for this one I can already see that it's just isn't quite enough divisions. So I'm going to grab all of these edges and hit connect. Loop. That gives me another cross section exactly halfway in between. And also, if you'll notice, I am not using any of the buttons for viewport rotation. I'm using holding down the middle mouse button to pan, Control and Alt middle mouse button to zoom, and when I'm in the perspective mode, Alt middle mouse button to rotate. This will save you a ton of time if you learn how to use it. I'm using the loop command to give me this whole selection that I've picked. Alright, so there's the general layout for that. Go into perspective mode, front, try and get these lined up this way. Now once you, in the side view, I was using the full scale, but that once you've got it set in one way, you only want to use the scale in the new direction that hasn't been taken care of yet. Otherwise, you're going to ruin the progress that you made from the side. Using Alt-W will toggle you in and out of and then I'm also using the shortcut keys for giving me these different views. F is for front, L is for left, P is for perspective, and I've got it set up so that Control L gives me right and Control B gives me back, because just B gives you the bottom. You can see from my scaling on the side that this was just way too wide. Alright, so now I've kind of got a general... Let me go ahead and see if I can get this working. Connect. It's always good to have two views. I actually have two monitors, but for this tutorial it would be way too resource consuming to try and be capturing on both of them. And always try and be thinking about which sub-object mode is going to give you the choices that you want. If you're wanting to move this edge right here, it would be silly to make yourself go in and select both of them in order to rotate them, when if you just think ahead and actually select the edge itself, you'll get that. So always be thinking about what the most efficient way to do your current action would be. Alright, well, I'm going to move the pivot point to the center so that I can mirror this. If you hit F12, it brings up your move, transform, type in. So I've hit effect pivot only, and now I want to move the X to 0. So now I've got it in the middle. Now, when I give my mirror command, mirror screen coordinates, I'm going to say instance. And I like to leave the one on the right not transparent, so that if I ever need to get a nice little look at what it looks like as a solid, I'll look at the right half. If I need to know what it looks like transparent, I'll look at the left half. They both still obey each other. And I'm probably getting a little bit too detailed too fast, so I'm going to back off for a second. So the important thing right now is that we're just going to be massing out the volume. So I'm going to do another cylinder. I'm a big fan of the cylinders. This is going to be the torso. Now if I press F12 again, if you right click on the bottom arrow, it will automatically zero it out. That works in the scale as well. You can hit 0 and it'll scale down to nothing, which is nice if you're trying to get 2 points overlapping each other. So this is a bit too many height divisions, so I'm going to take it down for a second. Make it transparent with Alt-X and bring down its radius. Alright, so here's where I want to start from. Now, before I'm going to mirror it over, I'm going to get the general masses, convert that to poly, set out as a whole, because this way I can scale the entire cross-section and it will do it proportionally, and you'll see why that's not a good idea to mirror it yet when I actually do go in and mirror it. Alt-W brings the screen, brings the current viewport full screen. And always try and think about if rotating it will give you a bit more definition. Than if you just keep it straight across. I like to keep this right about the clavicle level. F for front. So now you can see that all those scalings messed up my front perspective. And probably be better to actually use the loop function so that I'm not constantly selecting and unselecting the vertices. And I try and picture where the actual rib cage runs when I'm placing the parts up here. And actually I went a little bit too wide on this one. The rib cage line runs right here, and the reason why is because the pieces of the anatomy that give you this wing line and the pec line and the shoulder line, those are all going to come from definition later on. And they are actually not just a widening of the torso, they're a flap in the back and a flap in the front. So you want the rib cage mass to stay right here where it is. Now another good thing to do is there's actually a bias to the torso. It is not a perfect cylinder if you look down the center. And now that I've got the massing taken care of, I'll go ahead and mirror it over so I don't have to be constantly selecting everything. So I'll select these two, connect, these two, connect, and now I'll grab all of these, delete, give myself the mirror image again, instance, make this one solid by hitting Alt-X. Alright, so now for this bias that I'm talking about, it is not a perfect oval looking straight down. It has the tendency to be shaped more like this angular thing because all the back muscles massed together create this kind of bias. So I like to get that in as early as possible. You always want to make sure that you get the general shape right in the lowest poly version, because you might later on get so caught up in the details that you forget to add those large parts, and then once you start cutting, you've got 10 times as many vertices to move around rather than if you'd done it when you were at a lower poly stage. It's going to be the arm, And I'm thinking, since my poly range for this is actually only 2,000 polys, that 8 sides might be a bit much for the arm. And I like giving the arm an odd numbered sides, because what that does is it gives me a line up the top for helping define the deltoid, the split between the tricep and the bicep, as well as it gives me a flat part on the underneath to help do the deformation lines with the chest, and an edge along the back to help define the tricep and the elbow line and the way that the arm works. It's just nice to be able to have it like that, especially on the lower poly. And the other thing that I'm doing is when the camera starts misbehaving, you're rotating in the wrong position, if you just hit Z, it will focus in on the object that you currently have selected. Convert to edit poly. And I'll kind of try and match this up to where the actual arm is going to join in. Remember, the wrist is squished oval. Grab these three and connect. That'll help me. The other thing, if you have a certain sub-object selected and you want the equivalent of another, if you hold down Control and click on the next one, it will convert it over. So, like, say I've only got these and I want the vertexes, Control-click on the vertexes and it'll give you that. You can do that for pretty much anything. Right. I'm going to attach this. Gives me a mirrored over version. I do like to use a box for the head. That's about it, though. And the division lines that I put on it, if you've watched my head modeling tutorial, I give 2 along the length, 1 along the width, 1 along the height. F12, and I'll 0 it out. Didn't want to do it on the Z. Convert to the poly, delete, attach. Now here's why. For the lowest poly version of a head that you can really do and still define all the major points, you've got one to start to separate the division from the hairline and the face, one for the brow, one for the tip of the nose, one for the chin. This one becomes the jawline. This one becomes right for the bottom of the ear. Change the temple into the ear. It's just a real low poly way to start your head. And then backspace gets rid of the edge there. So there, and I drew this ear too far forward. It go more back like this. And you always want to have, the reason why I'm massing stuff out first before I actually go in and really start to cut what goes where is it gives you a feeling of of how the final mass is going to be, and because of that, it lets you adjust aesthetically where where you want your volume, where you want your details to be. If you don't have the pieces already generally set up to their general masses, then you might make some decisions based on placement that doesn't reflect how the final object is going to look. In the same way that painters will just lay down their largest blocks of light first, you want to lay down all your volume first so that you've got an idea of how the final product's going to be. Alright, now I'm going to insert vertex, 2 of them. Connect. Connect. The reason I do this is to pull up lets me give a general idea of how the shoulders are going to work. Then I need to put a little bit of a box for the hand. I have pre-made low poly hands that I could use, but for now this is just to give me a general mass. And I actually decided on doing a much beefier hand than is in here in the concept. So I'm going to kind of show that with my... Whew, not that big. This just kind of represents the fist. Delete that one. So now I've got it all as a single piece. Alt X. Right, unselected. And this lets me just kind of get a feel for the mass of the object I created. And I can make any kind of adjustments that I think will help the readability. So I'll look at it from far away, see what kind of a dynamic it has. See if there's any kind of things I might want to adjust, even this early in the game. I'm pretty happy with it, so that's my general massing out. And the next step will be starting to join them together and getting a little bit more definition in here. So I'm going to save it off. Always incremental save. I've got Control tilde, and if you label it with a version 01 or just an 01, when you hit the plus sign, it will save it as the next number. So sometimes I'll have directories that have version 01 through version 58 or 78, and that way if you ever make a mistake, you've always got one to go back to. It's just a good practice to have because hard drive space is cheap.